Hi, everyone. Welcome to Art and Talk. Art and Talk is an online interviewing platform for artists to share their art, creativity, and passion. Thank you so much for watching today. Today, we're going to be exploring the spiritual arts, and we're going to be looking and exploring the spiritual area of channeling and being a mystic, and exploring our guest spiritual artist, who is a master intuitive psychic. So I'm so excited to introduce to you our guest spiritual artist. We hope you'll stay in touch with us on social media, on Art and Talk, on our YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook page. Please subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate your support. Again, thank you for watching. I'm Leslie Sue, the host for Art and Talk, and let's dive into the area of the spiritual arts with our master intuitive psychic that we'd like to welcome today, Jennifer Pepper. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to be here, Leslie Sue, and I love that you're doing these interviews with so many wonderful artists.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. So, mystic, spiritual arts.
It's a mouthful.
Yeah, yeah,
What is a master intuitive psychic? Maybe I should begin there.
sure.
um, I have been studying spiritually what are known as esoteric and Gnostic teachings. Those are the core teachings. I've studied Kabbalah, ancient Jewish mysticism. I've studied Christian mysticism, and I've studied shamanically with Native Americans. I've studied in Asia. I lived in Southeast Asia for a year and a half, studying Buddhism and meditation. I've lived in Peru and studied with shamans in the Andes, spent a lot of time in Cusco in the Sacred Valley. I've studied in Sedona and lived in Sedona, working with Native American practitioners, medicine people, did a lot of work with the Hopi, which was an extraordinary experience. So as a master intuitive psychic, what that means is I did go to college for that degree. I went to Atlantic University, but I did not do the credited version. I monitored. So you can take the coursework at your own pace. And those teachings included how to, for example, perfect the ability to do remote viewing. It's something our military teaches and has taught for decades. It's understanding, what really hooked my interest in all things of transpersonal nature was when I was in high school. I learned that during the Cold War, the Russians were spending more on psi research, which is PSI. That means transpersonal and psychic abilities. They were spending more money on that research than America was spending on the space program. And when I learned that, I was like, wow, they really do know something. And I went on my journey. It was something that led me to, one, really getting an undergraduate degree in art history, because for me, art is truly the universal language of love, of wisdom, and mysticism, of archetypes, of colors, of themes that are collective and universal. And to me, art is the language of choice. So I began studying art and art history and seeing all this crossover with my vocation, which was more spiritual at that time. I didn't feel I had the right to go get a degree in spirituality. I didn't even really know it existed other than theology, and I didn't want to be a priest or a nun. So I was sort of cultivating all of that on my own as I was in college. And then I went on to Emerson College, graduated with a degree in communication media arts, and did a lot of writing and studied all through this with a lot of really fascinating people. And what I mean by fascinating people is every being has something of real value inside of themselves that really is from source, the divine intelligence that creates life. And those are erupt through the arts, through music, through poetry, through writing, creative writing. And It comes in the way of meditation. It comes in the way of mindfulness. It comes in the way of being open to receiving signs, messages, and understanding you're not in this life alone, that you have energetic companions that are assigned to you. Some call them guardian angels, and they are. And there's different realms and fields to that. Like there's different channels in sound technology. And even I often say to folks, gosh, you know, the first sentence of the Old Testament of the book of Genesis is, in the beginning was the word. And I'm somewhat ad-libbing because there's like 35,000 versions. The beginning was the word, and the word is God. Boom. Word is sound. And when you begin to understand the ancient languages that may have been translated from, it becomes word. And we think it's a word. It's a sound. And so these vibrations of energy that are flowing around us, and I also often describe to clients, well, think of a dog whistle. The dog can hear it, but it's not a frequency your ears are designed for. But maybe you hear it subconsciously. So I was fascinated by all things metaphysical in the way of seeing something, feeling something, hearing something, that zone that musicians get into when they're writing, or dancers get into when just they just have it and it captures them and you feel it, and it's that it thing. I have goosebumps all over me just talking about it. I am in love with that feeling, and life is difficult. So it's been a practice that's become a career for the last 12 years. And I have taken all of this study and research and education and experience and worked with, now I'm at over 4,300 people that I have been in sessions with. And those sessions are typically a channeling of sorts. I connect with people through breath, get them grounded and in the moment with me, and then it just opens and they feel what's coming in. They can often hear it, see it. I get a lot of follow up about, I've had comments of how grounded and how safe somebody who might have been in the midst of major anxiety and medical crisis can discover. And so it's about coaching people into um, the universal collective, the unified field that is a real energetic place. It's not a place, but it's a place. It's a frequency we can tap into, and I believe artists tap into it just by the nature of their need to create. And it's such a beautiful expression of the unified field to create music or to create art and to interpret with that language of the visual and sound and tactile. You know, kinetic sculptures fascinate me because it's a fixed form moving, or it's several fixed forms moving and becoming a new form. And we as human beings, I like to refer to us as love beings, becoming through the human experience. And as love beings, we really are birthed to understand all of our fields of energy. And you, Leslie, see, you have a crown chakra, third eye, you have a throat chakra, heart chakra, solar plexus, sacral and root chakras. These are energetic centers, and through traditional mysticism, or excuse me, through non-traditional older lineages of mysticism going back thousands of years, say through Ayurvedic practice in India, through some of the teachings that come out of the Golden Triangle, you receive different teachings of the Buddha based on where they cultivated the information. So what may be taught in China is very different, perhaps, than what's taught in Thailand. And in Thailand, there's a great influence from India. So there's a lot more what's known as animos. So you see Ganesh included, you see Shiva, you see more than just mindfulness, which is just this lofty Buddha that's, you know, above all. And that isn't really the case, as we know. And we know his journey included, he was a man who went on a fascinating journey. And it's so profound that his 2,662 years ago, I believe it was, that he transcended, uh, we are still sharing his teachings. That teacher was also a man named Jesus Christ. That teacher was Mother Teresa. That teacher is all sorts of beautiful beings, sainted people that we've recognized. Saint Francis of Assisi, for example, people that took on a life and a work of art with their spiritual development. And David Bowie, he's one of my all-time favorite performance artists, but his entire life was a work of art. And he knew that somehow. I mean, his spirit in how he wrote Lazarus at the end of his life, and he also published Black Flag, was just astounding. What a stunning, putting a stamp on the envelope before your soul heads home. It's like, wow. So really, it's working with people at a level of what have you learned and what have you loved? What are you learning? What do you love? And just realigning with that, profound shifts will happen for people because they're divinely designed for those profound shifts, not to be stuck, not to struggle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What a
I
beautiful.
hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah. Your journey is absolutely beautiful and so rich and varied. And you bring so many things to the table because you have a strong knowledge base. So the education and the intellect and the knowledge is very important to you. And you
It was,
have cross cultural experiences and different influences and all of the senses, primarily as you mentioned, the hearing and the seeing and touching, and also the heart, the sense of feeling, you're tapping into and is important to you as well. So it's kind of like you're covering everything all across the board. Um, I'd like to get into.
well, it really isn't, dearest.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to insert what I'm describing is known as clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairauditory. Everybody can do that.
Mhm.
They just have to be coached and taught. And we only know what we know because we know it. And that's what we learned, right? And we've unlearned a lot. So mysticism is about discovering core teachings going back thousands of years that have value because they are keys to some of the great mysteries, and they are about the interconnectedness of all
Mhm.
and understanding there's a divine intelligence holding that all as an all. It's not just what man makes and believes and practices. There's so much more
Mhm.
than just our names or our job or our family or where we're from.
Mhm.
And so sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it's those clairs are how they refer to it. So it was navigating my personal mandala. I'm known as a level 5 psychic, so I simply have all those uh, transpersonal communication channels developed, and I teach people how to develop it within themselves. I
Mhm.
do sessions one-on-one and just help people clear some stuff that's going on. I had a couple clients this morning. Um, it's and then I'll take a few days just to decompress, because when you work in those higher fields of frequency, it can kind of, you need to sort of stay in your own zone, not go the speed limit,
Mhm. Right,
if you
right.
will.
Yeah,
Might be that you're going a lot slower than the speed limit.
right.
And it's and just to explain, I don't think I'm special at all. It was really because I was so vain. I wanted to have the education. I was like, well, it's, if I don't have an education, it may not be real. So that was my own ego, needing confirmation somehow
Mhm.
as I went along. Like, I didn't plan this out. I caught up with myself about 15 years into it. when some folks that knew me pretty well were like, whoa. And and I realized, yeah, whoa. I'm getting, I was having friends and family members call and say, can you check in on this and tell me what you're getting about it? And I would, and it was often medical. And so I became first a medical intuitive, and I was affiliated with some doctors, and they gave me permission to do my work. And then Dr. Caroline Meese, who's an author, did a session with my mother and I in 1999 or 2000. And she confirmed and asked my mother why my mother needed a session with her when she could just go to me for it. And I was shocked. She just popped up with that in session with us. So that gave me permission to step out a little bit more. And I think for a lot of people, it's about giving yourself permission. This is real, and that mysticism is real, and metaphysical is real. We are connected in ways that are profound. And the better we can understand that individually, the faster the shift collectively that will create more harmonics and balance for humanity in general, regardless of language, culture, creed, doesn't matter. It's a unified intelligence that's created us. And if we stay tapped into that energy field, it regulates us. It puts us back into homeostasis, which is balance for optimal health, optimal levels of energy, optimal creativity. That we're just here to birth art and learn and love. It's so simple. We've made such a mess of it.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Jennifer, and I love all that you're sharing. And I love the kind of reference to the self, as you mentioned, that we all have this unified field, this unified, source love light within us, and it's part of our evolution, so to speak, to be able to, tap into that, for ourselves and live out our destiny. I would love to get into your process, because you have your clients that you help, and we have a great overview of your experience, and some of your background, and a little bit of kind of what's going on with you. But let's tap into what it's like when you're actually working with your clients, and if you could share some of that with us, that would be great.
Sure, I'd be more than honored to. This work happens not because of COVID, but this work happens remotely more than in person. I mean, when people can get with me, they love to work with me in person, but I don't need to be with the person. I need to be connected with the person. So one of my certifications is in breath work. I open all my sessions with guided breath with my client. When it's remote, and I have clients all over the world. I mean, I've got up in the middle of the night to work with somebody in Abu Dhabi, it just for time zone purposes. Or when I lived in Thailand, I was 15 time zones away from all my clients in the US. This is work that is about connecting through the breath, and then bringing the person into grounding with the body, and then raising their attention that they are the awareness of the body and the breath. And at that point, when I feel that we're really open and that their channels are in alignment and they're in the now with me, we, meaning the professors, their guides I work with, that I channel, much like Esther Hicks channels the teachings of Abraham. There's a lot of channelers that we have, and we have oversight. Okay, we're not just running around randomly. I hope not anyway. There's rules, and there's things that are safe and not safe. And so you want to be with somebody who's got very clean energy, not somebody that's needing to pay their bills, but somebody that's sitting there completely present and available to you, and able to remain so in a clean, safe manner, so that when these fields are opened, you're vulnerable. And someone working, so I'm like an energetic Sherpa. I'm going through those fields of energy, and once they've spoken their full name and date of birth, it's a channeling that comes through. The clients ask questions as they need to, but typically they just sit back like, whoa. And I have had folks, and for me, I had someone do that for me when I was 18, and she really blew my mind, and it helped me profoundly.
Mhm.
There's doorways inside of each of us that we can open and we can explore, and we may discover we have talents we had no idea we had by working with an energy coach or a master intuitive or an intuitive psychic. There's Because once someone has trained and spent a great deal of time in the metaphysical of possibility, with healing profound illness, with healing profound mental illness, with seeing the shifts and changes of what love, the energy of love, and being connected to your own source love will shift and create for someone. And it doesn't mean I'm some ascended being at all. I think I'm deeply wounded. Oh, wounded healer, heal thyself. So a lot of this was my own, again, my own need to heal. And in navigating that mandala, which for me represents the individual, if you will, because energetically it's also called a Merkaba. We're moving fields of energy and vibration. And that is an activation state that generates a theta brainwave that creates just complete calm in the whole body. And you just go, whoa, I'm so peaceful and blissed out. I don't know if I can speak. That's when I'm happiest. Everyone that refers clients to me tells the folks they're referring, bring a box of tissues when you work with her, because it does get emotional, and people, when they pop open or the honey in their heart starts to flow, as I like to call it, honey can harden and we don't know it. And we all have manna in our hearts. We have hearts full of honey that wants to flow and feed us and flow and feed us, because you're a toroidal field. I'm a toroidal field. A tree is a toroidal field. We're fields of flowing, living, loving energy. And what we pay attention to is what we're feeding our energy. And my process is breath and moving in the moment and activating someone's awareness. They're not the body or the breath, they're the awareness. There is a body and breath. And then that channeling, they're opening and giving me permission to go into that soulful place of their source, because they're speaking their full name and date of birth. I have to be invited in. I mean, it's not something that you just run around scanning people, although occasionally out of fear or concern for my child or someone else, I might, scan safety. And that's another skill set that I love. I work with a lot of athletes, and they have an incredible capacity to harness their attention because they're athletes, and they're really fun to work with. I've worked with a lot of pro skiers, snowboarders, mountain climbers, runners, road bike competitors. And when, they get all that adrenaline rush out of the body's generating all those good vibes with the athletics, but they might be severely depressed, might not feel like they're in touch with that very conditioned body, might lose sight of why they're doing what they're doing. And when they crack that back open, I've seen guys with what were called career-ending injuries, and women come back and have a second wave of a career in their mid-30s because they mastered their attention and awareness. They harnessed it. They worked in a way that was about discovering the mind, the body, and the spirit.
I have so many questions for you, and I love all your sharing and explanation. I want us as much as possible to kind of step into your shoes and kind of step into Jennifer for at least just a few moments so we can experience what you go through. So if first of all, it all begins with the breath, which is our life force. And you mentioned at the onset of a session with one of your clients, the first thing that you focus on is you're focusing on your breath.
And I guide them into that breath with me. And it's an inhale through the nose, filling to the last sip of breath, filling the lungs, holding it for 3 to 4 heartbeats and exhaling through the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
The more, and then as they're doing this, shoulders are dropping, arms are growing a little heavy, abdomen softening. And then I gently just speak to their attention and get their attention to listen. And then I move them all the way down to the base of the spine or to the feet. And then exhaling all conscious thoughts. Sometimes I'll visually place them on the side of a riverbank, and that their stream of consciousness is that river that they're seated on the bank of. And then I raise their awareness outside of their body. I take them outside of their body so that they're aware that they're not the body. They're the awareness of the body and the awareness of the ears listening and the eyes being closed and the breathing flowing through the lungs. And then I raise them up over the building they're in or wherever they're seated and gently bring them back down into their body, and then ask them to please speak their name and date of birth. What's interesting about that is the name. Oftentimes, people will just give me a first and last name, and I'll know, oh, that's not the whole name, or there's a name here that's missing. So the one challenge is sometimes just the simple act of speaking your full name at birth and your date of birth. Then I breathe a few more times. If they can just go there, it just opens. But sometimes the married ladies often speak their married name, and I need their full name, the name they were born with, and then any married names that may have come along with that. So I try to advise folks on that. Please give me your full name. Mm-hmm. In, and those are fields of energy. And that's why that's important. Your name is energetic. It carries an energy signature. And your birth date is deeply personal because it was your soul day. So when I share with somebody, I don't say happy birthday, I say happy soul day. Because it's the day your soul was already birthed. What was born was your body with the soul occupying it. And that is, you're so close to source still at the moment you're born. Regardless of anything, you're just new and from your source point as an infant. There's something about calling it in at that point with the birth date that I was instructed by the professors, who are the guides that I, get monitored by, I guess you would say, or they were the first ones to start visiting and showing me things at a very young age. And one of them I refer to as the grandfather. And then the rest are the professors, because it's like the planet's a giant university, and there's all these different colleges and schools under the multiversity, let's call it, not a university. Uni is one, multi is many. So let's say the planet's a multiverse of institutions that souls are birthed to come in and learn about love and learn and learn and learn. And they may learn a lot of pain and struggle, as it seems to have been the case the last couple thousand years with all our wars. But let's hope, as I do, and I know many millions around the world now are moving into a collective consciousness of deeper compassion, a bit more empathy and awareness of our neighbors and their condition in life, instead of just on the go, talk, walk, run, eat, bye, and repeat. Right. And along the way, I learned the average human has like thousands of thoughts a day, almost 80,000 on average, and about 74,000 of those thoughts are repetitive. So we can crack out of that together, and all of a sudden your honey's flowing, your creativity is flowing, Leslie Sue, or whomever it is. And that continues with metaphysical awareness. So my work is to, one, disengage somebody from the body and the brain and get them into their spirit. And I do that with breath and guided visual meditation. Once the channeling begins, all the sessions are recorded when I'm with the individual. I often use essential oils, flower essences as it comes up or comes in. Or I may ask them to come into the session if it's remote, I'll get a hit on the oils that we're going to be working with in session that day, because time isn't linear. And when you start working spiritually, you understand, if there was a pathway up a conch shell, that little ant, you know, navigating up through the conch shell might think it's walking in a straight line, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's really going in spirals.
Mm-hmm.
So life is a spiral. It's not linear. And that's where this work is so profound. And people will start having past life memories. They'll start recognizing other people as somebody they know. They will start feeling more confident about listening to their intuition. They will often become very confident to step out with a project. I've had a lot of folks come back who complete something, and a year later they get back in touch with me and they're like, oh my God. And I don't hold on to all the memories of every session, but it'll come like a book. Like you can have all these books on a shelf and you don't remember every word in every chapter that you read, but you know you read the books. And then when you pick the book up and you open it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember this story. That was a great section of that story. We're like books. So we all want to remember we're not just turning the page on our own story. We're vibrating in a way that is adding story, that is closing story, that is entertaining a different genre. And so everyone has the capacity to go tabula rasa, which is the blank slate. And divining, there's angel cards, tarot cards, the I Ching, pendulums, runes, Napoleon's oracle. There's so many divining, reading tea leaves, reading palms, right? How do you divine the information? So then you can add tools to your toolkit, and you can be like, oh, I like the crystals and I like sacred geometry. And I sent you that photo of all the spirals. So that mosaic photo, if you don't mind putting it up for a moment, that's an example of all of us. So that's the divine intelligence that I'm referring to. She's demonstrated her essence through his form, right? So the masculine is the form and her essence is the spiral or the fingerprint. She is the essence of that infant, that seashell, that flower. And I love the flower because you see all the other crossovers of her spiral, creating spirals within spirals. Our entire solar system is a spiral. Our weather systems are waves. The unfolding of a plant, it's magnificent. The unfolding of a little infant being born, or a puppy or a kitten or a colt or an elephant or a giraffe or a butterfly. Butterflies never even see their own wings. And who knows what they go through in the pupa, turning from a caterpillar to a butterfly. They turn into liquid and stay inside there and reform into a butterfly. I mean, it's magnificent. And these are the things that I cultivate as value. These are nature's expressions, and these inspire us to our art. Seashells have been sewn on our clothing for I don't know how long. Seashells were the original currency of humanity. It was seashells. A lot of people don't know that. It's just fascinating. And they revered the form. They recognized it. They revered it, understood it, honored it. You know, where they built their villages and homes and how they conducted a lot of work on Earth was very much about working with the moon, working with the stars, seeing these, they followed these spirals. So I love that mosaic. Thank you for putting it up. It shows the forms, and her essence is in every one of those forms, creating the spiral. And that's how I see Holy Mother, Father, God, right? So the deity or the divine intelligence for me is divinely masculine and feminine. Form is masculine, essence is feminine. And they are in this beautiful dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that form as in genitals either. I mean that energetically.
Mm-hmm. And the spiral so beautifully interweaves that and that whole like connection, and it's so profound, and the movement and flow is just like, it's like this beautiful like undulation, and like a beautiful dance move.
Oh, you should see me in the vegetable section of the grocery store. Sometimes if I'm in a really good farmer's market, I just marvel at the beauty of the vegetables because they're marvelous examples.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask you, and I love all that you're sharing, and it's so deep and so profound. Um, so I just like to kind of get into a little bit more of Jennifer and what you experienced. Um,
Oh,
so okay, so we're going into the breathing, the life force, and then you go in and you take your, kind of like moving into what you take your clients through. So then you're going into bringing them into like a meditative state, and it's bringing them down to their feet, and this whole type of thing. So now can you take us from your perspective, experientially, um, okay, there's the protocol, as you mentioned, certain parameters. So once they've stated their name and given their date of birth, so you're connecting in with them, they've given you permission, and there's this sense of communion and openness. So take us through what is going on now. Are your guides speaking to you? What are you seeing visually? What are you hearing, so that you're actually taking this
yeah,
person?
no,
Mhm.
thank you. That's a very fair question. It varies for me. I with some people I see their guides around them. I often will see ancestors and people that they had a close, intimate connection with who've crossed over around them. And I acknowledge them and I let them know when they're, first of all, I let the client know who's around them. And it's like so I'm out of my body and I'm in a place energetically that's like a light chamber, where it's, I call it a cosmic phone booth, and we're making a connection. It's a contained space where I feel safe. It's very important I share that I'm not interrupted when I'm in that place because I'm very vulnerable and I'm going attached to my body, but I'm literally out of my body. And there's the ethers, which are, so what is the fourth dimension, right? That's hard to explain. We're in third dimensional reality. We know there's a fourth dimension and we know there's a fifth and a sixth and a seventh, but how do we define that when we're in this one? So it's about moving out of this dimension of linear space and time. And I've done it so often for so long, it's for me very quick.
So you
Which you are an outlier. If you've done something many thousands of times, you can activate that pineal gland in the center of the brain. The pineal gland is represented by our third eye and our crown chakra. And the pineal lives in the center of our brain. It's like a little flower and it wants to bloom open. And mine just opens at will, with the breath and whatnot, because I've spent just thousands and thousands of hours in meditation and in practice. That said, I do hear, but it's inside of me. It's not outside of me. I mostly it's mostly visual with me, and different intuitives have. They say the most common is to hear. So those are mediums that are hearing the spirits speaking. I'm clairauditory, but I tend to be more clairvoyant and clairsentient. I feel it, see it, and know it all at once. I can do psychometry, which is holding an object, and I can read, let's say it's a watch, and somebody wants to know more about their grandfather. They'll leave the watch with me for a time, and I enter a meditative state holding the watch, and I ask permission to go in, and that being's whole field of energy is still there. And it's the same with art. So one of the things I really love about art, and I discovered long ago, was in my teens, I was living in West Palm Beach, Florida, and there was an endowed small museum from a family in Palm Beach that was just a collection of Georgia O'Keeffe paintings. And it was this absolutely exquisitely architecturally designed space. It's not that it was that big, but it was designed for natural light to come in through the ceiling and to illuminate her work. And it led you into a spiral inside the space. And I just fell in love with museums in my teens, and sitting with the art and sitting with the light and sitting with the vibration of what was being communicated. And I found in my fascination with religious studies, as some people call it, it's not, it began that way, but it led me into being a spiritualist and a mystic, was religious art. And it's coded. It has a lot of deeper meanings. Once you start recognizing the archetypal language of symbol and the power of mythological symbol and how much that informs our subconscious and generates a reaction, you're not triggered as much by some of the bigger themes. You're like, oh, that's a collective reaction. Like a wave, a rogue wave going through. You just want to be mindful of that rogue wave. Don't be fooled into thinking the world's coming to an end. It's waves. And so in this work, when I'm channeling, my ego's out of the way, and spirit guides are literally, the words are coming from them. I can move it started with automatic writing, and then I started channeling when I was maybe 18 or 19, and I'm 54 now. So the channeling, and I went into therapy, like, oh my God, like what's happening? And I had a therapist that turned me on to Edgar Cayce because she recognized what I was describing, and I was channeling the Akashic records, and I had never heard of them. Grew up in a very Catholic family. And so I asked my mom, she goes, oh yeah, the first time you started talking about past lives, you were about 4. We took you to a battlefield monument, and you were like, oh, I've been here before. I was riding a spotted horse, and I was like, well, thanks for sharing. I think I was about 20 when she told me that story. So it's a mystery. We're all kind of putting it together. Our parents don't always know that they may shut down our higher awareness. So again, going back to the infant when we're first born, and that's kind of the energy field. That's why I do the breath work and the guided visual meditation. It's like we want to be as vulnerable and as new as when we were infants. We want to receive, and the ego wants to react, sort, rate. So I have to work around ego and the egoic mind. And that's the biggest challenge in this work. It's also not always literal. Some of what comes through is figurative, and I call it everyone's on their own spiritual treasure hunt, because these signs, these hints, these clues, it's like, when am I going to meet the love of my life? And it's your next door neighbor. And you're so busy wondering, when's he coming? When's he coming? But my best friend's my next door neighbor. But when's he coming? When's he, So it's really, we fool ourselves. So we all want to kind of be able to call bullshit on our bullshit, save ourselves a lot of money in therapy. So it's really about, and I have a huge ego, but it's like getting it out of the way long enough to receive and trusting the information that's coming in. And I think being coached by an intuitive psychic or somebody who has a master's in transpersonal communication like I do is just a beautiful way to confirm that which you already know. And you're needing to really understand, underscore it, confirm it. You need someone else to acknowledge it with you, be an audience to your experience. So I'm the audience, and I'm the channeler, so I'm the witness for them, but they're the primary subject, and I'm witnessing it and sharing that with them so that they can see, feel, hear, and know that which they already see, feel, hear, and know.
Mm-hmm. And that
they need to go out of the way.
Mm-hmm. Right, yes. And in that non-linear spiral, sacred, honey flowing, breaking open way, when you're feeling that and experiencing that, can you describe a little bit of that to us?
Yeah, it's sometimes I just go there. Like if I'm in an airport and you find out your flight's delayed and you're like, oh, I'm in an airport. I walk. I'll find the longest, whatever they call those things in airports, the course, causeway, or I can't think of the word for it right now, the longest area to walk. And then I do what's known as a walking meditation, and I deliberately inhale through my nose and exhale through my mouth. When you're in an energy grand central station like an airport, there's a lot of folks coming in and departing, and there's a lot of coordination and travel. And you can actually move into a place of tremendous learning and so not being in your brain about, oh, I can't believe I'm wasting 5 hours of my day waiting for a delayed flight. What if I miss my other flight or whatever it is? So we all have that. That's our egoic mind, doesn't like to be interrupted, doesn't like to be delayed or told it has to wait or line or, that's not fun queuing up, right? These walking meditations are where I go into higher consciousness and I'll see things going on in different countries around different people. It's kind of like watching the news in a way, and you can energetically. I don't know if I should share this. This just came up. I'm going to share this because this is true. In March of 2001, I was living in Sedona and studying and learning from some pretty cool people at the metaphysical realms. And I was doing a channeling and I got information about New York City. And I had been living in New York City prior to Sedona. So at first I thought, oh, I was in New York for 6 years. I thought, oh, that's weird. Why am I seeing the New York skyline at dusk? Or is that morning? I'm like, I think it's morning. No, I'm not sure. It might be dusk. And then I saw two giant DNA helixes rising made of thousands of lights, and they were right next to each other as two towers, and the lights were spiraling. And I called friends in New York. I said, "You got to get out of the city. Something's about to happen." I have goosebumps. I didn't understand that vision until 9/11 occurred. And when 9/11 occurred, I was in Sedona on a bike ride that morning, and I had house guests from New York City whose son was in the North Tower. And I had two cousins working in the World Trade Towers, and I had two more cousins working down on Wall Street. So I think energetically, I had lived in Tribeca on Duane Street. Energetically, I was doing a channeling in Sedona. Energetically, I saw thousands of, forming two giant DNA helixes rising, lights that I knew were souls departing New York City. I was like, there's going to be a massive event with thousands of people departing at once, columns of light. And I just kept getting water, but now I understand that the danger came from over the water. And oddly enough, I have continued to have a really profound connection with that particular event. With people I've worked with who were there, with family members that were there, et cetera. And that was a monumental event in our country. So those larger themes, when somebody really practices at this level, you do start seeing energy weather. For example, you can look at Hopi elder teachings and prophecy. You can Google that. Look at Hopi prophecy if you want to Google what really going into the unified field and exploring outside of linear time will bring you. If you look at the Mayan calendar, if you look at the, which was all spirals and circles like a mandala, that's a 25,000 year calendar. We shouldn't just shrug that off. These folks 25,000 years ago made that calendar. It was accurate, extremely, like way more accurate than the calendar we go by, the Gregorian, which was papal law in the late 15th century. I prefer lunar calendars, and ancient Jewish and Buddhist teachings and practice all go by a lunar calendar. So the Buddhist calendar is lunar, and the traditional Jewish calendars are all lunar
Mhm.
and far more accurate.
Mhm.
So
And
it's about breaking out of a lot of the, I guess for me to say, where do I go? It's like I'm in a spiral of space and time, Leslie Sue, and I'm attached to my body, but I'm not in my body thinking. I'm allowing it all to flow through me to the client. I'm allowing myself to be a vessel for their oversoul, for their higher information, whatever language you want to put around it, uh, guides, ancestors, loved ones coming in. I've had profound messages that I've shared from those who've crossed over to those who are still here. Beautiful, meaningful. One was a lady, she was 78. She'd never had a reading. She heard about my work, came and got it. Her mother showed up. Well, her mother had died like 27 years prior. And she's like, I can't believe my mother's here. Like, I don't even think about my mother. And this lady had raised 4 kids and led a beautiful life. And she was in her late 70s, retired in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And her mother had a very, very, very specific request. And I heard from that lady a year later, and she called to thank me and said, I want you to know there's a book being published because what you channeled, what you brought in from my mother, we went back to the house in Connecticut and we found that box you described in the attic. And yet you were right. It was filled with letters going back 5 generations in American history to the American Revolution. And her family took all those letters, and it's now been published as a book that's been gifted to the Library of Congress. And apparently some of these letters are disclosing more honest perspective. So that's why it was a family secret that her mother was aware of. It's why it wasn't something generationally protected, or the mother had crossed over and been like, oh my God, you got to get the box, get the letters in the box. And she did it. And so this lovely gal got back to me and was like, thank you. And then I found out a couple months later, she had severe dementia and ended up in a home. And so the souls that have crossed before us will often have messages of things. Might be just a loving hug. It might be, oh, let them know, blah, blah, blah. They may have a very specific message, or it may just be, hey, every single, when you do this, and the spirit will show me something the person does about their grandmother, grandfather, mother, father, brother, sister, lover, whatever. And those communications are really why I stepped in to do this, because I was working with folks who were terminally ill. And I'd be like, God, there's so much that, like with some illness, you can't speak. And there's so much you have to say that you need to say. You want your memories to be honored and treasured because those are your treasures.
mhm.
And I am deeply honored to be able to share that, teach that, and honor that. And I believe that at some point we'll revere death as much as we celebrate birth.
Mhm.
And we have baby showers, we'll have death showers, and people can give all their goodies away, and others will share their favorite memories and stories of the one who's maybe ill. And if there's not a chance to do that because of a sudden death or accident or foreseen event, there's still a coming together in space to honor the loving memories and know that we have to still laugh at the same memories, not just grieve the person that's gone.
Mhm. Yes, yes.
And so when spirits and souls have information about unfinished business, I'm deeply honored to carry that message to someone they want to be aware of it.
Right, right. Yeah, definitely. There's a huge importance with that. And you're kind of like the communication vessel, so to speak.
A lot of, yeah, and I'm not alone in this. There's a lot of great mediums out there and channelers. I just, for me, like to help people. So my persona and my choice of how I do my work is to do more one-on-ones. Although I think I'm moving to a place with my work where I'll probably be doing it in larger groups. because I feel more confident now that I've done it for 12 years to step up and take it to a different level. And I think collectively our society is ready to explore in small businesses, in families, in relationships, business relationships, personal relationships. Let's explore together. And so I've done a few sessions with several family members together, and it was really beautiful. I've had parents bring me their unruly teens. I'm like, oh, I let the teen out of the room after about 5 minutes, and I go find the parent. It's like, come on, you're the one that we need to get in some time in the chair with. So it's the hardest thing is when I get intuitive hits about people and I want to help them. And if I'm not invited, I'm not supposed to go interrupt. So when I was younger, I ran around telling everybody I thought needed some help with something. Oh my God, da 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 da. And now, and I don't do that now. I'm very relaxed about it. So it's hard to describe because I spend so much time there. It's my familiar. It's easier than navigating the grocery store,
Well, that's
which can be challenging because of self checkout. Like I can't even get through self checkout without help. So,
right.
but I can, you know, metaphysically do some pretty fun things.
We still have a few more minutes, Jennifer, before we need to close. I just want to make sure that there's some clarity in terms of some of the ways in which you heal your clients. I know you've described and gone into so many things, and I appreciate all your sharing. Just like, for example, in a little bit briefly, so let's just use healing kind of generally, whether they have a question or it's a physical healing, mental, emotional, spiritual, all the different things that a client will come to you with. So the healing is done through communication, it's done through energetic work, it's done through you being able to, and correct me on this, through being able to kind of kick them into a spot in a space of awareness within themselves.
Yeah, and I get it very quickly. So when it comes in, it just drops in very, very quickly. I don't see myself as a healer, although when I do work on people, a lot of heat comes off my hands.
Okay.
And I've had people tell me it felt like I was holding charcoals. And I may just move some meridians around if they're in my space. I keep a massage table. I have a far infrared mat. I charge it up. I'm also a certified massage therapist so that I know the anatomy of the body so I don't bring any harm to anyone. But I'm not a healer. I'm just the mechanic, There's some minor adjustments. The person is a beautiful instrument. They're a beautiful grand piano. I'm just the piano tuner. The piano is the piano, and you are your own grand piano. You're also the musician, and you're there to create a symphony, a composition. And you might be ready to close out one composition and start another, and you're trying to continue the same theme of a composition. And I'm going to just retune you a little and share some of the insights that came from my time with you. And it's that I've had those comments, whether they're with me in person or it's remote. I have someone I've been working with quite a bit in the last month who is post-COVID and unfortunately is experiencing a tremendous amount of neurological consequence. Pro athlete whose body is in peak condition, but she was vegan and she believes that really dropped her immune system. So I work with her a few times a week on the phone, and she came back. She sent some folks to me this week who shared that, so and so, we've all been trying to help her for a few months, and she was saying after one session she was able to sleep that night and woke up feeling better the next day. And I was like, wow, I'm really happy to hear that. So I didn't do that. She's doing that, but I was holding space around her that she could reoccupy, get out of anxiety. And I go in energetically and I use intuitive knowing, and I use wisdom teachings, and I use that esoteric lineage that's a core current that flows through anyone who's alive. Anything with a relationship to gravity is living.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, it has divine intelligence in it. And that divine intelligence, just sometimes you need to relight the candle. Sometimes you need to just rinse out the vase, put some fresh water in it, and then put your fresh cut flowers in again. You need to change out. So it energetically, I see myself as more of an energy Sherpa,
Mm-hmm.
an energy guide, if you will. I'm reading the signs. I know the trails. I know the mountain. It's your journey. So I'm going on a part of that with you, or, and we're visiting some things. But what's most deeply satisfying is when somebody begins trusting their own intuition, and they'll be like, can I just check in on this? And we get a confirm. And it's like,
Yeah.
way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Good on you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'll do that for each other.
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are some great analogies and great kind of like explanation and really providing some great insight. We are going to need to wrap the show up, Jennifer.
Yeah.
If you can just touch upon anybody who might be watching that might want to be developing their inner skills of conscious awareness, opening their third eye, having the honey flow from their heart, tapping into their higher source consciousness. Now, obviously, you touched upon it's important to have a mentor or mentors. You mentioned the meditation. You have a strong.
I believe so. Yeah, that's my personal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ego will create beliefs and hold us up. Mine has. The ego is vain, and the ego likes to be in control, in charge. And the ego can be very dangerous if you give it a little bit of information, like some of the true wisdom teachings of Kabbalah, which is ancient Jewish mysticism. You don't want to give someone a little bit of that, because they can really do damage. You wouldn't give keys to the Ferrari to a 5-year-old
Mm-hmm.
and say, have fun. You would know better. So I believe in coaching. I believe in mentorship and having a teacher. That said, the truth is, the more you're open to that guidance and willing to park your ego and listen to your spirit, first you have to recognize when it's spirit or when it's ego. And one of the tools I use with clients is simply to say, if it's a repetitive thought you're having over and over, it's your ego. The soul's soft. It'll slip in, and you may not even pay attention to it. Like, stuff comes up all the time in session, and people are like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about that this morning, wondering if I should do that. It's like, yeah, I guess you're supposed to. So there's, for anyone interested in developing their own psychic abilities, there's lots of folks like myself out there. My company is called Sky Farm Care. I'm based in Bozeman, Montana. I work remotely in a secured Zoom room. I've been doing this professionally for over 12 years. And I am affiliated with some wellness centers and some pretty amazing folks. There are lots of good coaches that are intuitive psychics. Sonia Choquette. Carolyn Meese is no longer doing session work, but she does retreats, and she does a beautiful, you can sign up for her Zoom blog, or her video blogs that she puts out weekly. I think doing a little research on brain studies, understanding that the brain is regenerative, that you're not broken if you're diagnosed with something like a mental health illness or a mental health challenge. You're not. So the power of your brain, even just following Dr. Daniel Amen, he's phenomenal. He's done over 150,000 brain scans. He has one of the top TED Talks of all time, Dr. Daniel Amen, A-M-E-N. He has Your Brain is Always Listening to You show that is a free video you can sign up for, that he publishes weekly on Instagram and on Facebook. So just keeping yourself fed with the current information, the current science and spiritual information that's converging in a meaningful way that is confirming everything I shared today. It's not coming from me, it's coming through me.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone wants to work with me, it's Jennifer Pepper in Bozeman, Montana, or they can just Google Jennifer Pepper Intuitive Psychic, and I'm right there. And they can visit my website and submit an inquiry, and I respond personally, and I book everyone personally, and I like to know who referred, what are your needs, and how can I best be of service.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to check in with folks before I work with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Jennifer.
And if I don't feel I'm the right person, I don't work with them. I'll refer them to somebody. Like some folks are, I had a call from Shanghai, China, and she wanted me to take her back 5 years to alter a decision she had made. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I guess some folks might have booked a session with her and tried to do a past life regression or, some guided visual work, but I don't. I just say no. I would, and then I referred her to someone in Thailand that I knew might actually be willing to work with her at that level.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Who am I just know what my own comfort zone is, and I like to keep it very clean. I'm very transparent, and I make myself available after the fact. I don't abandon people. It matters to me that they've adjusted with one gal is a lifelong client now, because in session with me about 6 years ago, I saw a mass in her colon, and it was tucked inside her large intestines where they twisted back, and she'd been having abdominal pain for months, had been to many hospitals, CAT scans. Nobody could figure out what was going on. And then I showed her on her body. I'm like, tell them to look in here, and they have to do an ultrasound. They've got to get down into that large intestine. And they did. And the surgeon said to her, if you hadn't come back and done this, you would have been dead in 6 months. So it really can open folks to saving their own lives, mm-hmm. and changing a course in their life. Mm-hmm. So I encourage anyone with an interest in developing their intuition to pursue it. And there's a lot of great resources. There's the resonanceScienceCenter.org is a wonderful site. Tremendous information there. That's a marriage of science and spirituality. Some of the finest minds on the planet contribute there spiritually, from a quantum physics or a doctorate in math or a rocket scientist. Worked with all of them. It's so cool. Mm-hmm. And they let it happen. Mm-hmm. So it's really for anyone of all ages. It doesn't matter how old you are. Obviously, you need to be walking and talking mm-hmm. a little bit to comprehend. And so I think the youngest child I've really engaged in session was 4.5. And I just drew art with him, and then I read the art. So his guides told me it was okay. His parents asked me to do it, and I do art with people, especially children or somebody that maybe have a lower level of communication because of an aneurysm or a stroke. I can still draw with them, see what colors they choose, and I'm reading all of that because there's energy information around every breath and choice. So when they go and just draw something, I can read it mm-hmm. and follow it back to where it's coming from their energy field. Mm-hmm. And that's a more masterful level of something, but that's only, again, because I've done it for so long, so mm-hmm. often. But anybody, there's young folks cracking it open, and they'll go much further generationally than I have in my generation. And hopefully we'll continue to cultivate that with our kids coming with each new generation and really get them going places.
Yes, absolutely. Jennifer, we're going to need to have to wrap up the show. This has certainly been enlightening. And yeah, and I love all the information that you're sharing and the advice that you recommended as well, and all the work that you do. And I know that you said, that one of the things that you do is follow the lunar calendar. So before we close, I wanted to wish you a happy new moon. I know. Because today is
it is a beautiful new moon today, and it's the 11th. Yeah, it's a powerful day, they say, for absolutely old karmas behind us. This is anything you want to masterfully create, manifest, focus on it today. because the universe is listening
Mhm. Thank you so
and
much.
wants to bring it to
Yes, yes.
many blessings.
Thank
Yeah. Have a beautiful day, Leslie, and keep up the interviews. They're awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, Jennifer. We appreciate you being our spiritual artist for today and sharing all that you have, and continued success with all that you're doing and
Thank you.
everything. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching today. We appreciate your time. Again, please stay connected with us on social media, on Art and Talk, on YouTube and Facebook. We appreciate it. Thank you again, Jennifer, for sharing so much with us and being our guest spiritual artist. And we'll talk soon on the next Art and Talk. Until then, be well and be blessed.